Man, I really didn't expect to have this much to talk about after a Texas race in April. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Like I said, we have a very full show today. I thought about trying to divide things into 2 different episodes, but really a lot of these kind of come together. I'm just going to make this one big episode, so buckle up, get ready. We got a lot to discuss. So much to discuss, in fact, I'm going to borrow this from Pardon the Interruption on ESPN to keep us organized so you guys can see what we got to talk about today. So for starters, yes, we were at Texas Motor Speedway, and Kyle Busch, at long last, I mean it's only been 7 races, but at long last, got his first win of the season. Finished second a few times, he was the points leader coming in, now he's definitely the points leader by a larger margin. He got the win in the Interstate Batteries Toyota. Not a whole lot to discuss there, I'll get into it later. A lot of big name drivers, a lot of heavyweights really had a lot of issues. We saw drivers like Truex run into trouble, Larson run into trouble, Kevin Harvick had to go back to front like crazy. You know, things just kind of ultimately sorted themselves out where Kyle Busch had the track position late and had one of the, if not the best cars, and it was just not, you couldn't pass him. Like I said, Kyle Busch is the points leader in NASCAR, which really doesn't mean much of anything. I guess if you're the points leader at the end of the regular season, you get some bonus points for that, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, it's got to feel good if you're Kyle Busch to win at a 1.5 mile racetrack, because we know NASCAR's got a lot of 1.5 miles on the schedule. This always bodes well for later in the season, especially because we come back to Texas in the round of 8, so this could be a crucial race in November. Moving on, I alluded to it, Kevin Harvick had a wild day at Texas Motor Speedway. Early on, he took the lead, had like an 11-second lead at one point. It looked like it was going to be the Kevin Harvick show once again. I picked Kevin Harvick coming into this race mainly because he'd won the other 2.5 mile races this weekend, and my pick was looking very good for a while there. It looked like nobody, and I mean nobody. You could have put an Indy car on the track and nobody was catching Kevin Harvick. That is until Kevin Harvick's pit crew did what they do best, and that is suck. They had an issue with the jack, which maybe wasn't all their fault. They had issues with pit guns, which maybe wasn't all their fault, but all this led to them being a lap down midway through the race. And it took them honestly a lot longer than I thought it would to get back onto the lead lap and even to get into the free pass position. It seemed like Harvick's car really, for at least the middle portion of the race, really did not seem to handle very well now that he was in traffic. Eventually he did get back on the lead lap, and through some pit strategy had fresher tires than a lot of other drivers, and he just, late in the 3rd stage, just rocketed through the field, quickly got to 2nd place and was reeling in Kyle Busch for the race lead before the final caution. And after that final caution, tires were even at that point. Kyle Busch obviously held off Harvick to win the race, but it was a good battle, close battle between the two of them for the final 15 to 20 laps or so. But there was a bit of controversy surrounding Kevin Harvick. I mentioned how his pit crew had a couple issues that put him a lap down. Yeah, well, it appears as though they got away with an even worse penalty that would have almost certainly ended their day, or at least ended any chances of them getting a top 5 or a top 10. After looking at replays, it seems as though Kevin Harvick's team should have been whistled for an uncontrolled tire violation, which you can see from this image right here. They say the tire has to be within like arm's length of the crew guy at all times, and clearly that is, you know, unless you're Yao Ming or Elastigirl, that's more than arm's length. But NASCAR seemed to let it slide. They admitted after the race, actually, their competition directors, everything admitted that that was a missed call. But NASCAR, you have all this automated officiating now. You peg people for the smallest of infractions. You could be a 0.5 mile an hour over the speed limit on pit road. That's a penalty. You get these right all the time. Why did you let this one go? Especially because you whistled Denny Hamlin for the exact same penalty earlier in the race. I don't get it. I don't want to sit here and imply that, you know, NASCAR is trying to show favoritism to Kevin Harvick, because, you know, if you ask me, I don't really know why NASCAR would be trying to cater to Kevin Harvick. He's not exactly the golden boy of the sport or anything. But it definitely is kind of frustrating. Maybe they thought of it as like a makeup call, because it's like, oh, your pit gun had an issue, like everyone else's pit guns have had issues. Oh, we'll let this one slide. But you can't do that in NASCAR. Then you turn to the NBA, and most people hate the NBA officiating, so please don't do that. And speaking of pit guns, I know we haven't talked about it in this show that much, but people talk about it all the time. These pit guns are just breaking left and right. I know this season NASCAR mandated that everyone run a standardized pit gun that NASCAR gives all the teams, but these guns every week, and I mean every week, we thought it would get better after the struggles we saw at Daytona, Atlanta, Vegas. It's gotten worse. Pit guns are breaking left and right. You so much as touch a pit gun, it's going to implode in your fingers. It's getting ridiculous. And I get why NASCAR implemented this rule. They didn't like that teams were spending a lot of money to get better pit guns and better technology and be more efficient. They want to make it fair. And that I completely get, but unfortunately they've turned it into like pit gun communism over here. I mean, I get it. It's like, hey, we don't like that you successful teams are spending all this money to get better pit guns. We want to make it fair. I get that part, but instead of making it fair by giving everyone the same good pit gun, we're going to give you all the same really crappy pit gun. That doesn't work. It's pit gun communism. It's ridiculous. I don't know what they need to do. They should probably go back to what it was, honestly, but they got to get this right because we had several guns malfunction again on Sunday. It's insane. But anyway, going back to Kevin Harvick and the missed penalty, yeah, it should have been called. Harvick had one of the, if not the best cars. He had one of the top 2 cars there. He was obviously going to have a great day. But that pit crew, his pit crew sucks. This has been well documented for years. I don't even know if he has the same team he did 3 or 4 years ago, but for years, Kevin Harvick's a great driver. Rodney Childers is a pretty darn good crew chief. His pit crew sucks. They lose positions every time. Even if it's the equipment issue, it just seems too consistent to be a coincidence at this point. Kevin Harvick's pit crew is terrible. So anyway, that's the only thing that I think is going to keep Harvick from winning a championship this year is his pit crew. Effectively, it might have cost him the race this weekend. It should have cost him a top 10 if NASCAR got their calls right. So anyway, I'll move on from that. I'll talk a little bit more about penalties here because there are some other drivers that did not get penalties after the race at Texas or during the race at Texas, but we might see some penalties later this week. After the race on Sunday, these images started circulating online. These are images of third place finisher Jamie McMurray's front windshield kind of doing this dip thing, and then you see Chase Elliott, who finished 11th. His rear windshield's also doing this little bendy dip thing, much like we saw Harvick get in big trouble for a few weeks ago. So the Reddit police are on it again. I heard that NASCAR's on it as well. They're definitely going to look into some of these, I'm sure, and I'd say 80 to 90% chance we see some pretty big penalties hit these teams on Wednesday. Kevin Harvick got busted for doing this exact same thing earlier this season. They took away his win. They docked him a bunch of points, fined him a bunch of money, suspended the car chief. Highly likely this happens to McMurray and Chase Elliott as well later this week. And while the Kevin Harvick one was significant because it took away a lot of bonus points he had collected, this one for Chase Elliott and Jamie McMurray could be even more important because this would knock Chase Elliott has kind of had an up and down season so far. He's run okay, but he's had some unfortunate bad luck finishes as well. Chase Elliott, if this penalty is anything like Harvick's penalty was earlier this year, it will knock him out of the playoffs as of now, which I know is early, but we all expect Chase Elliott to make it to the playoffs. A lot of people had him, at the beginning of the season, had him making it deep into the playoffs like he has last year. In the last couple of years, he's been pretty good in the playoffs. A lot of people expect him to make it into the second or third round. I think I even picked him to make it all the way to Homestead, and I still feel like that's possible. But man, they're gonna have to run a tighter ship if they're gonna come back from this potential penalty. I want to reiterate, this is not a penalty that I know is gonna happen or necessarily will happen. It's just one that, after we saw what happened to Harvick, I'm very confident that there will be a penalty for these two drivers later this week. And it's just, whether that's intentional or not, I think there is an intentional factor behind it, but it's not good. Some people I saw online saying NASCAR should throw the book at them, make a statement, because after Harvick got busted with this and now they're getting busted with it, you got to make a statement or something. I don't really like that because NASCAR tried to make a statement when they penalized Matt Kenseth and suspended him 2 races in 2015, and it really left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. I don't think they need to throw the book at these guys. I think the penalty they gave Harvick a couple weeks ago should have been enough to kind of wake all these teams up and make them not want to do this. So if anything, you could penalize these teams for just the stupidity of it. Assuming they actually intentionally manufactured these parts to act this way, yeah, Chase Elliott and Jamie McMurray's teams, they should get huge penalties because it's just stupid. But if, say, things kind of went left or right, we're not sure exactly how this infraction came to be, just give them what you give Harvick. I don't know, but yeah, I expect a penalty, and this is interesting news coming up after the race, just interesting to talk about. I'm making a lot better time on my list here than I thought I would. Moving on to the next thing, Daniel Suarez. This was announced after the race. He tweeted a photo, or it might have been on Instagram. I saw a photo somewhere of Daniel Suarez after the race had his hand and wrist bandaged up pretty significantly. If you remember on lap 2, there was a multi-car wreck when Alex Bowman spun out in front of the field. Suarez ran into the back of Austin Dillon, I think it was, pretty hard down the front stretch, was going pretty fast, hit him, clipped him pretty hard. Suarez, he finished 30 laps down, something like that, but managed to get a top 30 finish out of it. He came back to pit road a whole bunch, finished the entire race. Suarez ran the rest of the race, despite being 30 laps down, with this injured wrist. So yeah, he posted that photo after the race, caught my attention because I didn't expect an injury. The wreck didn't seem too severe, and I suddenly felt bad, but I was also impressed with Suarez for being able to gut through that race the way he did and come back to get a top 30 finish despite wrecking on lap 2. But it also raised some questions. We're going to Bristol in just a few days, which is one of the more physically demanding tracks on the circuit. 500 laps around that tiny little thing. Is Daniel Suarez going to be able to go? Obviously, for points purposes, this is an important race for Daniel Suarez, who's right there kind of near the playoff bubble right now, who needs to have some good races, good finishes to go his way to make the playoffs this year. So this is an important race in that sense for him. But should they determine that he can't go, or maybe he starts the race and they do a substitute driver type deal, who will fill in for him? I asked this question only as a Matt Kenseth fan who recently retired from Joe Gibbs Racing unofficially. Could we see Matt Kenseth? Could we somehow see Carl Edwards in that 19 car again in Bristol in a few days? likely, if you ask me, we'll probably see a guy like Christopher Bell or Ryan Preece or Brandon Jones, or who else does Joe Gibbs Racing have? We'll likely see one of those drivers, but it definitely begs the question. I hope the injury's not too serious. I hope Suarez is able to race on Sunday because I want him to have a good season and have a good points day and everything. But if he can't go, does anyone still have Matt's number? Just asking. Anyway, that's all I had to talk about on that topic. The last big thing I wanted to hit on my little checklist here is how the young drivers did, because I gotta say, Texas Motor Speedway on Sunday, that was the best performance I've seen collectively from the young drivers this season. We saw Ryan Blaney run well. He had to come back from damage. A very up and down day for Ryan Blaney. He came back and got a top 5 finish. Chase Elliott, I know, finished 11th, but he ran in the top 10 most all of the day. William Byron, the young guy, the young rookie, 10th place finish, a top 10 for Willie B. I like it. And Bubba Wallace with an 8th place run. Ever since he had that miraculous 2nd place run in the Daytona 500, this season's really been rough for Bubba Wallace. But to see him come out there, work some pitch strategy, sure, but he had a decent top 10, top 15 car. To finish 8th for Bubba, I like it too. But as someone who was at the race and is wearing a number 20 hat, I was super, super thrilled to see how well Erik Jones ran on Sunday. I picked him in this race as one of my dark horse predictions. And shoot, early in stage 3 there, I thought Erik Jones might be coming for his first career win. He led 60 some odd laps, finished 4th, and I would say probably had the 3rd best car behind Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick for most of at least the second half of the race, which was thrilling. Erik Jones has had a great career at Texas in the Xfinity Series. His Cup career at Texas has been iffy so far, but I gotta say, I was very encouraged by what I saw just yesterday, and I'm encouraged because now we're going to Bristol in a few days, which is one of, if not Erik Jones' best track. So I just wanted to stop and give Erik Jones a lot of credit. He's up to 11th in points. The young drivers in general, we had 5 young drivers, like kind of the youth movement of NASCAR, 5 of them in the top 11. That's pretty good. Although it is definitely clear that the veterans have the advantage. I mean, at the end of the day, Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick were the class of the field. Erik Jones was kind of a distant 3rd. And then you had, Blaney looked good. Elliott looked good at times, McMurray, but at the end of the day, it's the veterans who were taking everyone to school. And that's a trend we're probably going to continue to see for most of this season. But at least, hey, I was excited. So yeah, wow, went through that list a little quicker than I actually expected. So that's all I really got for today's episode. I was at the race on Sunday. Shout out to those of you who came up and said hi to me at the track. I ran into a few of you guys, and that was really cool. So shout out to y'all. Texas Motor Speedway put on one of the more eventful races I've ever been to in Texas. That was one of the, it was really cold. Don't get me wrong. As an overall experience, it was cold. I did not expect it to be 40 degrees, windy, and overcast all day, but it was cold. But it was definitely one of the more eventful races I've seen in Texas Motor Speedway. I thought it was a great race, had a lot of twists and turns. I didn't really talk about that much, but like the shakeups in the running order and whatnot we saw throughout the day. We had like favorites like Truex and Larson blow tires dramatically. Newman had tire issues. It was a topsy-turvy day at Texas. We don't see tire issues, especially on the new track surface. We don't see tire issues come into play, but we had 3 big names blow tires in epic proportions, honestly. It was crazy. We saw 2, 3 big multi-car accidents, which we just don't typically see at Texas Motor Speedway. We might see 1 every couple of years, but we don't see 2 or 3 in one race. At the end of the day, it was Kyle Busch versus Kevin Harvick, which isn't super weird, but it was a great race. I thought it was a great race. I hope most of you guys thought it was a great race too. It kind of pissed me off though when I went on like Twitter after the race to kind of see what I'd been missing out on, because I have terrible cell service at Texas Motor Speedway. I couldn't use the internet for hardly anything, but it kind of really frustrated me when I'm after the race looking through this stuff and I see so many people obviously talking about the lack of a Harvick penalty, talking about Kyle Busch, talking about some of the wrecks, talking about some of the young drivers like Jones and Blaney and all that. There was all that conversation too, but I kept seeing comments about like, oh, look how empty Texas is, NASCAR is struggling. And I don't mean to bring the conversation back into that again, but that really irritated me because I was at the race and it felt very full. People complain about attendance figures at NASCAR tracks, and don't get me wrong, they've definitely dropped over the last few years. We all know that. It's proven. That's evident. But I gotta say, I look back at some of my videos because I've been to a Texas race almost every year for the last several, like 5, 6, 7 years. I've been to a race at least one race a year almost every year. I look back at some of my old clips and looking at the stands, and like, I would say the 2012 night race was a pretty big crowd. The 2013 race was a pretty big crowd that I saw from my clips, my video clips. But I look back at like 2016, 2017, and then this last year, this one 2018, yesterday, the crowd seemed about the same. It felt like Texas Motor Speedway was maybe about 70% full, which yeah, it's not a sellout, but keep in mind guys, Texas Motor Speedway, I know they took out some of the seats on the backstretch, but when it was built 15, 20 years ago, Texas Motor Speedway sat more fans than any other track in NASCAR. Even to this day, with them taking out the backstretch seats, this place easily has to seat 120, 140,000 people, and I would say it was 70% full for the most part. 60, 70%, either way, there was at least 70 or 80,000 fans there. The infield with the campers and everything was completely full. I had the pre-race pass to go out on the track and on pit road beforehand, and that was as busy as I've ever seen it. And that was even though it was 40 degrees and overcast all day. So don't use this Texas race as the example that NASCAR is failing. Don't use that race as an example. I thought they put on a heck of a show. I hope to be back in November. Again, I don't mean to shout out Texas Motor Speedway. They're not paying me. Texas, you guys gotta pay me. I'm shouting you out every chance I get. You gotta give the boys some love. But I seriously mean it. I guess I'm just bitter because people say we need to get rid of mile and a half, and I completely agree. And I personally think that we should get rid of a track like Kentucky, or a track like, honestly, I know they just gave Vegas an extra date. I think Vegas should only have one date. But I think we should just build more short tracks. Build a short track in Houston for me, because I'm just grumpy that I live in one of the most populated states in the country, and the closest track to me is 4.5 hours away. That frustrates me. The next closest track is 3 states away, and it's 12 hours away. Like, come on. NASCAR's biggest issue is they don't have tracks in enough locations. It's all right there in kind of the Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama. That whole area of the country is where all the tracks are. Us out here in the Midwest, the West, the Southwest, we don't have any racetracks. So I don't want people to come out here and badmouth Texas Motor Speedway, because I think it's one of the better mile and a half racetracks, even with the repave, which will get better. I think it will get better over the next couple of years. I don't like that people come out here and badmouth Texas Motor Speedway. I don't want Texas Motor Speedway to get any more crowded than it was, because traffic getting out of there is already a pain. So it's like, if this place sells out one day, good Lord. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox right there. I just wanted to bring that up. Thanks for watching, everybody. You can subscribe if you're new to the channel and you like NASCAR racing. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your pets, tell your priests, tell your teachers, tell your mother. I guess she's your family. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'll be releasing a video in the next day or two. I took some footage while I was at Texas Motor Speedway. I didn't straight up vlog it the way I usually do, because I was there with I was just kind of enjoying the overall experience myself. I wasn't filming too much, but I took a lot of shots during the race, during driver intros and stuff like that. So I'll just post kind of a highlight video of that in a couple days. So you can check that out when it comes out. I'll do another episode about the Groove later this week, where I'll talk about Bristol. I'll talk about possible penalties that might be coming out, all that jazz. Thanks for watching, everybody. Follow me on Twitter @DexRacing. And I'm going to try and start posting more polls and stuff for this show on Twitter. I've been kind of slacking on that the last couple weeks. I've started strong, now I'm not doing as good, so I'll get to that. Oh, and of course, on Wednesday, I'll be doing a podcast that I've been doing the last few weeks with Danny B Talks and the Iceberg. I believe it will be on the Iceberg's channel this week, which I'll post a link to in the description. So Wednesday night, I believe at 8 p.m. Eastern is the plan. We might be changing it. It might be a little later. Actually, it might be 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll have to double check on that. But anyway, subscribe to them. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. Wow, a lot to talk about. I ended up talking more about stuff not on my funky list than stuff that was on it. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you guys later this week. Have a great one.